Okay, so before I get going, I should probably explain what I'm doing wearing a bunny hat. For those of you who recognize it, this needs no introduction. But since binging Bob's Burgers, I wanted a Louise bunny hat with ears.
Dad, Dad,
Yes,
Dad,
Louise.
hi.
Yes.
Did you know
Hi.
that it only takes 2 pounds of pressure to drive someone's nose bone into their brain?
That's what?
2 pounds! That's it, Dad!
Why are you telling me this, Louise?
Revenge.
I thought I was going to have to start a podcast and find some kind of reason why I needed to wear bunny ears for it. I couldn't find a reason and I couldn't find a podcast. But I did realize that I could probably do my reading thing, you know, how I'm like reading and practicing voices and performance and so on and so forth by reading one of my books. So the book is well, internally we call it Karma One. It's called New Orders, a space adventure. And I think we're up to about chapter 3 only. So if you want to start from the beginning, I'll link to that in the comments or wherever. I don't know if you can do it in the comments in the description. I'll find a way to link it to you, probably in one of these kind of thingy screens. Anyway, so that's what's going on. I'm wearing bunny ears and a Louise colored top because I want to. And I'm going to carry on reading the space adventure, New Orders. So hopefully you'll join me for the rest of the adventure. Chapter 3. My quarters, Q767, Deck 15, Karma 1, Sector 6. I spent the last day and a half sleeping and scouring the ship's computer, trying to get to grips with where we are and what I'm going to do when I arrive at the space station. By all accounts, I've got options. When I'm well enough, I can choose any course of study, retraining, or work from within the tabula guaranteed by the League's Accord. Since I'm vegan and my people are part of this alliance, I get to participate in the scheme. Like back home, I will have accommodations and care provided, and I can start contributing to the world in whatever way I feel my talents and desires will be put to best use. They have people who specialize in helping folks figure this out, you know, if we need help. I'll probably take advantage of the grief and reintegration counseling first, though. Right now, I don't know what to do with myself. Heck, they'd even renamed me while I was unconscious, and I've even ended up keeping that name. That's how little identity I have right now. Sure, I remember who I was. I just don't feel like I'm that same person anymore. Maybe it's the grief, but whatever it is, I need to figure out who I am for this next chapter of my existence. Fortunately, I have options. Lots of options. I have insights and experience that would help in these sectors. The population seems to be about 80% terrains, humans. The rest is a mixture of advanced Pleiadian cultures, the Atolls, the Empaths, Taurians, the warrior guys and gals, and Zorkians, the pyramid folks. I know, it's a lot to keep track of. Don't worry, I got you. I'll remind you as we meet some. They're bound to appear, given where we're going. Anyway, my point is that there aren't many folks who excel in technology and strategy. Not to brag, but those of us from the Vega system, we think differently. We're more technical. It's not just a stereotype. Our brains literally and medically work in a different way. Most vegans, in most instances, tend to be better at the tech and strategy stuff. And all that means is that in Sector 6, I could make myself useful in more than a dozen different ways, like at the cutting edge of their research and development divisions. And just to clarify, yes, a Terrain or a Zorkian could totally learn to do some of the things that vegans do with tech. In fact, I think that's something the League is working on encouraging through their education and training programs. But remember, I've had redacted number of years of experience in the vegan education system back home. So if I were cookies, I'm already done baking. Yeah. And you're confused by my scatteredness and weird crush that points to emotional immaturity. I know. I get it. Go figure. All I can say is that emotional functionality is distinctly different from intellectual capability. An internal message flashed up on the screen on the handheld device they'd given me. I tapped it to open it. It was from Commander Hooflix. My heart skipped into my throat again. Holy quasars, it's him! Checking up on me! Like he said he would. I closed my eyes for a second. Be chill. I should probably mention as well, I don't know why his name is pronounced Hooflix. It might be a Turanian language idiosyncrasy. They have lots of those in their language, I think. I haven't figured it out yet. I didn't want to ask around, lest I arouse suspicion. Hooflix. Dear Karma, I hope you've been resting well and are feeling better. I thought I might inquire as to how you're doing. He sounds so regal. My fingers hovered above the console keypad that had just appeared on the screen. The cursor flashed, waiting for my reply. My brain started to scramble. Be cool, but not too cool. Be smart and funny. He's an SLF. Maybe he doesn't appreciate that. In which case, it's a waste. Girl, stop. Just answer the damn message. If in doubt, be vanilla. I hate telling myself this, but it's a strategy I've adopted. It seems to work best in situations dealing with you folks, humans. Less to go wrong, less chance of humor being taken the wrong way, being misunderstood. It's all about the margin of error, namely reducing it. Karma. Hello, Commander. It's good to hear from you. I'm very well, thank you for asking. Fracking quasars. This is reminding me of those Jane Austen novels, the way we're talking. You know, the ones with the dashing Darcy and the rebellious Lizzie. Ugh, my life. Karma. How you doing? See, that was almost natural. Almost. Hooflix. I'm doing well, thank you for asking. I'm glad you're well. I was wondering if you might want to go for that tour this afternoon. I glanced down at my wheelchair. I've been trying to walk around, but I get super tired super fast. There is no way that I can walk around a ship with 30 decks. It's not going to happen. My heart sunk. Karma. I can't. I'm still in the wheelchair. Still get very tired very fast. There was a long pause. Oh well, guess that's blown it. I pushed away from the desk and wondered about doing something else to take my mind off the disappointment. Maybe he'll check back in a few more days. Then I might be ready. Another message arrived. Hooflix. That's no problem. If you're feeling up to it, perhaps you would like to visit the R Bar for just a short outing. I can come by and push your wheelchair if you like. We can leave whenever you feel tired. He stared at the device. Wow. Yeah. That was a good solution. I mean, this was all new to me. I didn't think I could ask for help. Karma. I would like that very much! Exclamation point. Oh, again with the Jane Austen speak. What the stars, Karma? I know, I'm an idiot. I can't help it. Deal with it. Hooflix. How about I come to your quarters about 1600? Does that work for you? 2 hours. Plenty of time to shower and dress, even in my incumbent state. Karma. Yes, that would be great. Looking forward to it. Was that too many exclamation points? It was too many exclamation points. Damn it. Anyway, that was it. Date set. Was it a date? Probably not. Just a meeting. An outing with two people. Two sort of people? And what the hell was an R-bar? The next 2 hours consisted of me getting showered and dressed and figuring out how to use the console at my desk to find out what an R-bar was. Turns out that the bar is called the R bar because engineers are a particular brand of geek. Think jocks crossed with nerds. In mathematics, an R bar is a vector orthogonal to the orbital vector of a satellite. In the case of a space station in orbit around a planet, this would make perfect sense. The R bar approach would be would put the vessel between the planet and the station as they approach from the surface. Arguably, the first place one is likely to visit after a trip to most surfaces might be the bar. Technically, though, this cute nomenclature also only makes sense when a ship is in orbit around a planet or something, not for a spaceship in free space. Engineers don't have the rigor of mathematicians. This is well known. They work to orders of magnitude when they are designing, and so actual numbers don't even figure in their calculations. Okay, I'm done teasing engineers for now, but I reserve the right to return to this subject matter for future digs. Excavations. Anyway, the R bar has a nice ring to it, and the bar part harkens back to the old days on terrain, Earth, where alcohol was served at a long counter with an actual bar of metal along it. After much faffing, the hour arrived, and so did Commander Hooflix. Things were as you might expect. He was kind and polite and asked if it was okay to push my chair. I confirmed, and we left the privacy of my quarters and headed down the corridor to the famed bar. I was nervous, obviously. He was hard to read. Eventually, we got seated and he brought some drinks over. Since I have very little idea of what humans drink, Commander Hooflick selected something that he thought might be amenable to a vegan palate. He nailed it. He gave me something similar to a kind of satisfying tea we drink back home. It was comforting. I guess he maybe figured that was what I needed right now. He was right. I asked some questions about human culture, and we talked for a little while about this and that. I tried to keep my crushing under control. I mean, some of his mannerisms were just so cute. I'm going to say cute here because, well, I don't want to embarrass myself more. But needless to say, I was having a great time. I almost forgot about the baggage I was carrying. He leaned in, one hand on the back of my chair, and spoke quietly. You want to know something surprising about human culture? I nodded. His tone was delightfully conspiratorial. That guy over there? I followed his gaze and then looked back at him. He was close to me now, as he had been when I hit my head against him, as he hauled me from the wreckage. I started to have a flashback and fought to stay present. He was saying something about this dude being passed up for promotion and going on some silly vengeance kick. Something about chilies in someone's replicator, a cat, and a whole crew being amused. And him saying the reprimand was worth it. Of course, now he's also stuck with the cat as a pet. We laughed. He was making it sound like this was a family. Despite the squabbles and the antics, everyone always ended up friends. He was still leaning in close to me. He was afraid. He wasn't afraid of being in my space either. He straightened up and sat up in his chair, his story done. Have you ever thought about having a pet? I asked. He nodded. I did briefly, but then I decided it would be too much of a distraction. I understood that. I've never had one because I was often traveling. Nomadic, you know. I paused. Thought of something a friend of mine had written. It was personal. I didn't know if I should share it, but he wasn't speaking. The conversation wasn't going anywhere else. Besides, I wanted to share something personal with him. I took a deep breath. A friend of mine, he wrote a story once and mentioned his protagonist didn't want a cat because it would be a waste of her love. She said she should save it up for a person instead. I looked up, trying to make light of it. I'm sure most cat owners wouldn't agree, but I liked his perspective. He thought outside the normal boundary conditions. Ruflix smiled. He'd been watching me carefully, I realized. I blushed. He sounds like an interesting character. He was. He was my best friend for several years. I needed to qualify that. He died. Oh, he looked surprised. Oops. Probably shouldn't spring that on people. I'm sorry, he added. Thanks. Me too. I still miss him. He was kind of a mentor, someone who would see the world differently and more like I did. We were both outsiders, even back home. He cocked his head. Not the person you were on the ship with. I froze up. I opened my mouth to respond, but I couldn't. Forgive me, Karma. I didn't mean to bring up terrible memories. No, it's okay, I stuttered. You should know, the man on the ship with me was my husband. His name was Cronus. We'd been together for 5 years. There was a brief silence, a brief, awkward silence. I knew that from the debriefing report that he was your husband. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you. He decided to change the subject. So, I've been trying to understand how the terrains on board use language, and I've not come up across this particular pronunciation before of your name. Paused for a moment so as not to sweep the acknowledgement of my late husband away dismissively. Then he answered my question. Oh, that's not a dialect. It's a quirk of my name. Oh, curiouser and curiouser. He pushed his tea aside. When I was activated, I was given some time to choose a name that would be most fitting for me, for my character and who I wanted to be. I spent a lot of time watching 21st century shows to try and get a sense of what this thing called life was all about. Anyway, the show seemed to be archived with labels containing either the letters HULU or NETFLIX. My peers started calling me Netflix after a while because of how long I spent reviewing the footage, but I watched equal amounts of both tags. When it came to choose my name, I just conflated the two. From the archives, I learnt that Hulu had been pronounced Hulu, which seemed reasonable, so I became Who Flicks. It all made sense now. That's inventive. He eyed me cautiously. For an SLF? No, for anyone. My statement stands in isolation. It was an inventive way to choose your name. I like it. He seemed genuinely pleased and then looked serious again. I don't know if you know this, but I also chose your name. That was news to me. Really? Yes, when you were unconscious, they kept calling you Jane Smith. I asked why, and they explained that it was just a common human name. I pointed out that you're clearly not human, and as an individual, you shouldn't be named the same way as everyone else, or like a piece of equipment. He kept talking, but in that moment, I saw how much insight he had into this concept and why he would be averse to people being given generic names. It mattered. Language mattered. And what's more, language mattered to him. He was revealing himself to me, and in the most profound way possible. So, he continued, I thought we should name you after something we all loved. The ship? He nodded. If you didn't know any better. If I didn't know any better, he was looking shy? The ship. We all fight for her, defend her, keep her alive and functioning. When I saw the medical team working on you and thought about how we'd rescued you, it just made sense. So I suggested we change your records to call you Karma. Tears had been welling up in my eyes, and they suddenly fell. I'm sorry, Karma, I didn't mean to upset you. You didn't upset me, you touched me. He glanced down at the table, noticing that his hand wasn't touching mine. A moment later it clicked. Oh, you didn't mean literally. I shook my head, eyes still watering as I wiped my face with the sleeve of my tracksuit top. He smiled. Humans get me like that all the time. I should know better by now. He shook his head to himself. I was about to ask him how long he'd been on the ship. Crash! There was an almighty smashing sound. The ship's automated dampening field activated immediately. The lights went out and then flickered back on. And then there was what sounded like a massive ionic discharge from the hull. Hooflick stood up abruptly and hit his comm. He spoke to someone on the other end for a moment. There was another crash and the same thing happened again. He looked down at me, then crouched to come down to eye level while he was explaining rapidly. We're under attack. The ship has appeared out of nowhere. We're returning fire. I'm needed in the command center. I nodded, still in shock. Was this normal? Did this happen all the time? I noticed him glancing around, assessing the situation. Some of the light fittings had fallen across the other side of the bar, and there were sparks flying. I saw him clock other personnel taking charge of the area and getting non-crew members out of the way. A harried-looking man scuttled by, then, recognizing the commander, turned back to him. Brent, what's going on? The commander was still calm. He gestured from the man to me. Rupert, this is Karma. She can't walk on her own. She's new aboard and doesn't know our protocols. Can you get her back to her quarters? Deck 15. Quarters 767, and then stay with her unless you're called to duty." The man ran a hand through his hair. In his other arm, he held what looked to be some kind of printed substrate. "Yes, yes, of course," he said, half distracted by the commotion. The commander turned back to me. "I'll contact you later. Stay in your quarters. Because of the structure of the ship, it's the safest place for you to be." I nodded, and with that he strode out of the arbor, gesturing to a handful of crew members to follow him.